Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today is date October 30th, 2024, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan on the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before we get started, guys, let you know that we are a news podcast. We do pride ourselves on doing the research, doing the work with the most reputable sources with award-winning journalism. We do not do sensational news like Fox News, the media, Newsmax, The Blaze, whatever extreme left or extreme right you get your views from. We simply don't do it. We provide you with just the facts, nothing but the facts. At the same time, guys, we do try to watch our language, but words do fly. At the same time, guys, maybe things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, one day before Halloween, a week before we find out who's going to be our next president. That being said, we got to start with Trump. Why do we got to start with Trump? Because every single week this podcast has been going on, I kept asking myself, can Trump outdo Trump? And he surprises me. Every week, he finds a way to outdo himself. Enter the rally at Madison Square Garden.
The race for the White House. Donald Trump held a massive rally at Madison Square Garden in New York City on Sunday. However, the MAGA congregation was severely criticized for its racial rhetoric, coarse insults, and dangerous threats to immigrants. Starting off his speech with a so-called message of hope, the Republican presidential nominee once again pledged to carry out the largest deportation in American history.
The United States is now an occupied country, but it will soon be an occupied country no longer. Not going to be happening. Not going to be happening. November 5th, 2024, 9 days from now, will be Liberation Day in America. It's going to be Liberation Day. On day one, I will launch the largest deportation program in American history. Next Tuesday, you have to stand up and you have to tell Kamala Harris that you've done a terrible job, that crooked Joe Biden has done a terrible job. You've destroyed our country. We're not going to take it anymore. Kamala, you're fired. Get out. Get out. You're fired.
Now joining Donald Trump was his biggest donor, Elon Musk, who again called himself a dark MAGA supporter.
As you can see, I'm not just MAGA. I'm dark, gothic MAGA. Well, the energy in this room is incredible. But there's a lot of people out there who need to vote for President Trump. Okay, so this is a real battle. This is a real election battle. So you need to get friends and family to vote. Make sure they vote early. This is important.
Now, of course, it didn't take long for Donald Trump's loyalists to show their true colors as they unleashed a slew of racist and hate-filled remarks against the Puerto Rican community and Vice President Kamala Harris. Calling the American territory of Puerto Rico an island of garbage, Donald Trump's allies sparked massive outrage from Democrats, Puerto Ricans, and even fellow Republicans.
I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah, I think it's called Puerto Rico. Where are my proud Latinos at tonight? You guys see what I mean? It's wide open. There's so many of them. It's absolutely incredible. Believe it or not, people, I welcome migrants to the United States of America with open arms. And by open arms, I mean like this. It's wild. And these Latinos, they love making babies, too.
The verbal attacks then switched from immigrants to Vice President Kamala Harris as conservative commentator Tucker Carlson spewed racist comments at the Democrat by labeling her a Samoan Malaysian, knowing very well that Kamala Harris is half black and half Indian.
Kamala Harris, she got 85 million votes because she's just so impressive. As the first Samoan Malaysian low IQ former California prosecutor ever to be elected president, it was just a groundswell of popular support. And anyone who thinks otherwise is just a freak or a criminal.
The dark tone continued throughout the hours-long rally as Donald Trump's loyalists piled on vulgar and racist remarks, one after the other.
You know something, Trump maniacs? I don't see no stinking Nazis in here. I don't see no stinking domestic terrorists in here. The only thing I see in here are a bunch of hard-working men and women that are real Americans, brother.
The racist and hate-filled rally comes just 8 days before a majority of Americans go to the ballot box despite early voting seeing record turnouts. The election is hinging on battleground states, with most crucial being Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Arizona, where the
So I'm going to cut it off right there just because I wanted you guys to really just see the hatefulness. I mean, forget the fact that we knew Dorito, Mr. Felon himself, was going to go to the greatest hits. Because, again, he's a con man. He performs in front of a crowd. He'll sit there and say all the things that, disillusioned, ill-educated Americans, and we'll make fun. Kamala, she's fired. Get out of here. That's what you get. At the same time, he talks about his mass deportation plan, which again, he says on day one, he will basically start the greatest operation of removing illegal immigrants from this country. Here's my thing, and I said this before. If you believe, if you're a homosexual and you believe, and by homosexual, I mean you have a little bit almost questionable love of firearms, if you believe that the government one day is coming to take your guns, which I've said on here multiple times, is impossible to do. The mass undertaking that the U.S. government will have to do beyond the fact is like, well, what if they use the Army? What if they use the National Guard? What if they use the reserves? Let me point something out. There is no way on God's green earth that the U.S. government can pull enough resources, manpower, logistics to remove every weapon that an American citizen occupies. It's impossible. The sheer details of it can't be done. Now, if you believe that can't happen, replace that with immigrants. Do you think that the American government, with all its resources, personnel, manpower, and logistics, you're going to sit there and tell me that somehow, some way, you're going to remove every illegal immigrant from every state starting on day one? People eat that up. Why? Because fear, paranoia, xenophobia, homophobia. Pretty much Donald Glover's This Is America. And again, it's Trump just basically spouting nonsense. But people are eating it up because they believe illegals are the problem, not realizing that illegals are the ones that are, if we're really being honest, immigrants are the ones that are saving this country. I don't mean to say stupid country, but immigrants are saving this country by doing the jobs you don't want to do, by doing the jobs you refuse to do. Like, for example, cropping. picking out crops, working menial jobs that you may not want to work. At the same time, these people are picking your food, probably washing your clothes, in the service industry, handling your food, and in construction. Because trust me, construction companies, if they did deport all these immigrants, construction companies will take a hit. Farming lands will take a hit. Manufacturing jobs will take a hit. Hotel, the service industry will take a major hit because you remove their workforce. And at the same time, you really do believe that this is the case, that for some odd freaking reason, removing illegal immigrants will make your job better. It won't. It won't make your life better. If anything, it'll make your life harder. Don't believe me? Do you guys remember when Governor Ron DeSantis was talking about not too long ago when he thought he was going to be president material, that he sat there and said any company that employs legal immigrants, those legal immigrants will be deported and that company will be fined $10,000 a head for each immigrant that was employed? How many immigrants left the state of Florida? How many companies, construction-wise, pretty much got halted because your crew is gone? Out of fear of being deported, or worse, they left the state of Florida. Construction crews took a hit. Farmers who owned a bunch of crops they could not get took a hit. And then they realized the people they employed were not as efficient as those immigrants. At the same time, complained about the working conditions, which again goes back to what I've said from Jump Street. They do the things that you don't want to do. But at a Trump rally, they don't hear that mess. And then you bring out a comedian, which again, I say this all the time, he's a roast comedian, okay? It wasn't the right venue. At the same time, Trump went on to another interview and said, I don't know who picked that person. I don't know them. It wasn't my call. Backing away from the fact that you call Puerto Rico a trash island in the middle of the ocean. All I got to stand and say to those of that ethnicity, I hope this made your decision on who you're voting for. I hope it made it very clear, because comedian or not, I'm sorry, that guy's going to have a hard time finding work after this. But at the same time, it fit what Trump was trying to say. These shithole countries, remember that line? Puerto Rico's one of them. He called Puerto Rico that. And then Elon Musk talking about he's dark MAGA. Elon Musk, an idiot above all else, who has done nothing but buy things and claim them his own. He didn't create Tesla, he bought it. He didn't create SpaceX, he bought it. And now he didn't create Twitter, but he bought that and turned it into X. It's the cesspool that it is now. And yet he's not. I mean, the one thing I will say that he did encourage, the same thing I will encourage: early voting. If you can do it, please do it. I know for Middle Tennessee, the last day for early voting is tomorrow, which is on Halloween. So if you can't early vote, go ahead and do that. The one thing I'll give Elon Musk credit for, that he actually said you should do that, outside of illegally paying people to vote, register to vote, which we'll get into that momentarily. But and Tucker Carlson, a man who used to be one of the three-headed douchebags of Fox News, now out on his own, still trying to pull a Candace Owens and hopefully be a pick-me napkin for whatever extreme right news publication he can be a part of. Talks about, well, I don't know if she's Samoan, she's Malaysian, she's Native American, and she's black. It's just the venue that you were in made it easy to make fun of it, because a lot of people think the same way that idiot does. And he's pandering, grifting. That's all it is. It is a mass grifting as a last dash, because the election is next week. And that, to me, should have been a great example of why Trump should not be elected president. Because you see what happens. You've seen what he done systematically in 4 years, changed the Republican Party, or I should say, took off the makeup of the Republican Party and showed its true face. And yet there are people out there who think just like him, will do the exact same thing, and will sit there and say, well, I'm going to vote for him because he basically speaks to me. he's a con man. He speaks to the disillusioned, the disenfranchised, and the ill-educated. So of course he's going to sound like he's speaking to you because he's your wet dream. So again, guys, if you were on the fence, especially those in Puerto Rico, if you were still somehow, some way still on the fence, and I'm going to get into that a little bit later, especially with black voters, because some people are still indecisive. I don't know how. But if that video doesn't solidify in your mind who you should be voting for, there is nothing more what I can say to tell you outside the fact of either you truly have your head in the sand or you simply do not care, which again, I hope that's not the case. But moving right along, guys, I have to give credit to CNN, although this was a wee bit late, although the moderator should have really done her job a little bit quicker, and the producer should have immediately cut to commercial. What am I talking about? I am talking about a guy who insults another person with the cringiest of comments.
What do you call Nazis? Stop doing.
You're called an anti-Semite. You've been called an anti-Semite more than anyone else's table.
Yeah.
And people sit there and no, by me. I never called you an anti-Semite. Okay. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying
I'm a supporter of the Palestinians. I'm used to it.
Yeah, I hope your beeper doesn't go off. The thing is that
you just say I should die.
You
should not.
No,
did you just say I should be killed?
No, I did not say that. No, I did not say that.
Hold on.
Did your guest just say I should be killed on live TV?
I said I hope
guys,
you're.
let me just stop.
You said you hope my beeper doesn't go off.
Because you sound a big supporter
of the Palestinians.
Hamas.
Guys, let me stop.
Palestinians.
Are you?
Am I what? No, of course I'm not.
I
Are you a racist, violent person inciting violence against
Ryan?
That's
disgusting. That is completely.
No, I apologize.
Good job, CNN. Let's have first block say the Muslim guy should be blown up.
I apologize
on TV.
Don't say then I apologize. You literally.
I thought you said Hamas.
You didn't think I said Hamas. I said I supported Palestinian rights.
Yes, I did.
Why? Because the comment was made by conservative pundit Ryan Girdusky.
Okay, so as you saw right there, guys, Ryan Girdusky, let's be honest, he is a part of a conservative pack that decided to sit there and talk about Muslim journalist Mehdi Hassan. Forgive me if I mispronounced your name. But he sat there and said, because again, Mr. Hassan had sat there and said, I support Palestinians. This, and forgive me for saying this, douchebag decides to sit there and say, I hope your beeper doesn't go off. For all those that don't know what the reference is regarding the pager explosions that were in Lebanon targeting Hezbollah militants. There are just some things that you don't need to say. And what that pendejo did was beyond the pale. Now, here's my thing. I will give them credit. They tried to gracefully bow out. But here's what should have happened. The moderator, this was actually on CNN's CNN Newsnight with Abby Phillips. The moderator should have sat there and been like, no, cut the commercial. That I will be right back. I don't want to give that individual more airtime because he knew immediately. Well, I apologize. I didn't mean that. No, your first reaction is your honest reaction. You knew exactly what you were saying when Mr. Hassan sat there and said, well, I support Palestinians. You knew you had that one in the chamber as if you were lashing out. Now, I will say this, Ryan Girdusky has been banned from CNN. He'll never be on CNN again. But watch his ass pop up on Fox News. Watch him pop up on Newsmax. Watch him pop up somewhere where they will give him the spotlight to explain himself. They will give him the spotlight to literally and figuratively go, well, he's the one that sat there and said it. I'm just saying, and they'll give him that. They will give him that platform. Why? Because conservatives will sit there and say, well, it's a cut job. You're just making him look bad. You're making him look like he's a racist, and all this. When in terms, he brought it upon himself. There are just some things that just don't need to be said. And if you say them, you intend to say them. Saying that and immediately apologizing makes no sense. It's almost like you're apologizing because you got caught. Now, again, I said the moderators should have immediately dumped out. The producers should have immediately dumped out, because giving this guy more time to talk is pretty much saying, no, we need this for the ratings. You are more interested in ratings than you were actually being objectified. Let's just be honest. Objectified is not a word. You're being reasonable. You're trying to be reasonable and dedicated journalists having a intellectual, constructive conversation, and yet the objectivity was gone in a heartbeat. So, yeah, I'll give CNN credit. They tried. Even Ms. Phelps came back on and said, well, it's because, that person, we have zero tolerance here. That person has been asked to leave and never come back. Okay, good. I'm just saying we need to be a little bit more proactive in these situations, to where if someone is intending to harm, hurt, or put out a message, then they need to be shut down immediately, not given more time to talk about it. That's just my thing. But I want to get back to Elon Musk, because, guys, I did talk about this last week, that his PAC is basically paying people to register in swing states as long as they believe in the First and Second Amendments. Remember when I sat there and said it was probably illegal? Yep, it is.
Catherine, the Philadelphia district attorney is suing Elon Musk and his PAC in an effort to stop his controversial $1 million a day giveaway to registered voters who sign his petition. What's the latest there?
Yeah, look, they're saying that this is obviously, in their belief, it could violate the law and that it could be illegal. This is as Musk continues those $1 million giveaways. This isn't the first that we've heard from entities either threatening to sue Elon, suing Elon Musk, or warning him that this could be illegal. This is still obviously developing through various different entities here, but it comes as we know that the Department of Justice has warned Musk that what he's doing could be illegal. That letter that we've reported on through sources came from the DOJ's election crimes unit. So a lot going on here in terms of the legality associated with what Musk continues to do here with his $1 million giveaways, though our reporter Will Staken has spoken to people close to Elon and close to the PAC, and it appears at this point that Musk continues and will continue to give out these $1 million giveaways, if you will.
So, again, I do like the fact that they are trying. Again, this is what I was talking about. Elon Musk is basically, with his PAC that he has out there, is looking for voters in swing states to have them register to vote as long as they believe in the First and Second Amendment. Here's the problem with that. That is influencing. That's the thing that I'm trying to get at, guys. Some things are influencing. And when you influence the voters with money, yeah. If you pay somebody, hey, you're not registered, I'll pay you $1 million in your state to register. As long as we in the First, Second Amendment, we'll give you $1 million. How is that not interfering in an election? You're basically saying, well, hang on, Will. He didn't sit there and say, we want you to vote for a specific person. We just want you to register to vote. Okay. Because he is asking them to vote, or he's asking them to register to vote, but he's paying them. You are still influencing an election, because what they're going to wind up doing, Elon's with Trump. Elon paid me. I'm going to vote for Trump. That's still influencing an election. So yeah, it's illegal. Now, at the same time, because I'll give his lawyers credit, they're basically they're playing in that gray area. So could it come back and they halt that? Possibly so. But it is illegal because he is influencing voters, because his whole thing is registering to vote. Okay, cool. Early voting, I'll give you that. Still a great idea. Paying people to do it, that's the freaking problem. Really and truly that it is. But we'll follow more on that as it comes along. Now, the reason why I was getting back on immigrants working said jobs, basically because they're doing the jobs you don't want to do. At the same time, companies take advantage of illegal immigrants. Don't believe me? There's a story out there right now about a pizza shop owner that has literally been sent to jail for the better part of a decade because he employed five illegal immigrants, 3 men, 2 women, and forced them to work for low pay in terrible conditions at his restaurant. And that was going on for quite some time. It wasn't until a tip to the Department of Labor to where this was investigated, to where they found out what this one owner was doing the entire time, and that his workers were underpaid, overworked, and if they, and threatened them with deportation if they argued against it. Crazy. And what I mean by that, he had them work 14 hours or more during a shift, sometimes 7 days a week, no days off. And this was all under surveillance in his restaurants. And I'm going to be honest with you, the fact that he just got 8 years isn't enough, but that's Trump's America. Trump's America is, hey, we want to deport the illegal immigrants except the ones that work for us, because we can exploit them. And again, I point this out. This is the reason why the immigration system needs to be fixed in America, right along with the VA. 2 systems that impact a lot can easily be fixed, but there's one side of our political spectrum that would rather sit there and blame the problem than work on the problem. And last time I checked, it wasn't Democrats, liberals, or Green Party. It's conservatives. But here's another thing I did want to point out, guys. It's just that with voting, remember when I sat there and said they're going to do everything they can to disengage you from voting, including voting by mail? Well, somebody took that to heart because somebody's trying to burn ballot boxes. I wish I could make this up.
And an investigation is underway following the discovery of an incendiary device inside a ballot box in Portland. Meanwhile, in Vancouver, Washington, ABC affiliate KATU captured the moment heavy smoke was seen coming from inside a drop-off ballot box. ABC's Alex Stone is tracking that for us from the LA Bureau. Alex, what's the latest on these incidents?
Well, we're just getting details on them right now, Diane. 2 different incidents, the one at 3:30 in the morning in the Vancouver or in Portland, and then 6:30 in the morning in the Vancouver area. Those 2 only about a 15, 20-minute drive apart from one another. And police in both of them, we know the FBI is now looking into them. Police say they don't know who did this. You can see in this video right here, the smoke coming out in the Vancouver incident. They know that there were hundreds of ballots that were in that drop box and that it involved ballots that were dropped off from 8 a.m. yesterday morning. The last pickup in the box was at 8 o'clock yesterday morning. And right now the FBI is responding. Police don't know, was this vandalism? Was it something more organized? They are investigating it, but just in the last couple of hours, the fire's breaking out.
So what are election officials saying to anyone who thinks their ballot may have been in one of those boxes?
Yeah, they're saying if you dropped off your box or your ballot in either of these boxes after 8 a.m. yesterday morning when they did their last pickup, that you need to contact the election auditor's office and let them know. And they will know and try to track where your ballot is and if they can get to that ballot and if the ballot burned in that box. But there were, at least in the one in Vancouver, hundreds of ballots in the box that did burn. But they say that they will be able to track that down. All of this a concern. The ballot boxes are a target for somebody who may want to make a point. We know in the Vancouver area, there is a tight congressional race going on. They don't know if that is involved in this. The FBI is responding. Police have now put out the fires and firefighters have put them out. Arson investigators are looking into it, but they are beginning their investigation. And was this something to try to impact the vote, to destroy those ballots? Was it somebody just doing something, putting something in there to try to create a scene or to get a reaction? They don't know as of right now.
It's only because they want to stop the vote. Now, again, I've sat there and told you for now going on 2+ years. I said it before and I'll say it again. As we're literally a week away. Next week is the election. We're literally next week from the election happening. And I keep saying this all the time. They will do anything and everything to make sure that you are disengaged, disillusioned from voting. And they'll even go so far as to burn the ballot boxes. This is completely crazy in times to where we are sitting here and we literally have to have this discussion. We had this discussion that, yes, someone is burning ballot boxes. And the only reason is because basically, guys, they don't want your vote to count. But here's the crazy part. What they don't get is if you do mail-in voting, your ballot comes up missing, they will actually reach out to you by text or by email and say, hey, your ballot is destroyed or compromised. We need you to do another one. And so you do another one. That's usually what happens when they can't find your ballot, or your ballot is or your actual vote, your vote in by mail has been destroyed or compromised. They usually contact you and you do another one. But this is what they're doing. And I hate to say this because the only people that brought up the security of mail-in voting has been Republicans. I will bet money that whenever they find said person, watch said person is a conservative. I have yet to find a story of voter fraud, voter induction, destruction, things of that nature that did not involve a progressive, liberal, or Democrat. It's always been conservative. But I digress. But I wanted to show this video because this next one is because this is directed to Black voters who are indecisive about this election. Why? You have a fully qualified Black woman who can be the first Madam President that we've had since this country's inception, who has to be above board, who has to be perfect, who has to be flawless, because the standard that this incredibly high ass standard that some people have held her to, versus someone who is so flawed, so compromised, so unhealthy mentally and physically, unfit for presidency, but because he's an open door, will gladly prop him up like Weekend at Bernie's. Now, Black voters, you have this choice. And again, after watching this video, I gotta ask, why the holdup?
This is probably the hardest election decision I've ever had to make, because I'm basing it off of not my personal self, but my core belief of who Trump is inside is what's driving me towards Kamala.
This is Clayton County, Georgia, just south of Atlanta, where more than 84% of voters picked Biden in 2020. That makes Clayton the most Democratic county in all this year's swing states.
2020, when Biden won, it was Clayton County who turned Georgia blue and got Biden the presidency.
How so?
Our people turned out. Clayton County turns out. We expect the same for Kamala Harris.
Almost 300,000 people live here, and nearly 70% are Black. The campaigns are fighting hard for these voters. Kamala Harris was just here with Stevie Wonder. We spoke to people at Black-owned businesses about what they were thinking in the last weeks before the election.
I'm really not into politics, but Kamala Harris, her movement, I will say I support two things that she said and is doing. The $20,000 loan thing for the Black entrepreneurs, I really like that because it gives us a chance to, get our businesses up off the ground. And another thing is she's trying to legalize marijuana. Because, a lot of us get locked up just for our cars smelling like weed. It's a lot of synthetic weed out here, a lot of fake weed that's, bad for us.
You want it to be legalized and regulated.
Yes, and what gets me the most is it's banned in the South, where it's mostly African Americans or Black people down here. But up in the other states, the Union states, the blue states, whatever you want to call them, it's legalized.
Well, who would you vote for if you do decide to vote?
I don't know, maybe Harris.
And why?
Just listening to some of the stuff that she's said so far as like helping people. I'm big on helping.
So why would you be undecided right now then?
I would have to say because this will be my first time.
Yeah.
First time, like, woo, okay. My mom They've never done it, so.
We found a little more ambivalence about Harris than we expected based on past voting here.
I'm not decisive. I'm gonna be straight up with you.
That's okay. Tell me more. Why?
Because it's two of the lesser evils. They're all bashing each other and saying this and saying that. Then I take that and I go do research. When I research it, I'm like, but I do know one thing. Trump is so bold that if the aliens is coming, he gonna tell you.
So in an Independence Day scenario,
yes,
he would tell you to evacuate.
He would tell. So, I mean, he can't keep his mouth shut.
What are your constituents saying about the election?
You get a mixed bag of peanuts. You get a lot of people that say, go Kamala. You get a lot of people say, I'm not into politics. And then you even have voices say that I'm voting for Donald Trump.
Early voting numbers were really high. What do you think that means?
I think that means people have something to vote for. I think that people are impassioned, emboldened. They're excited to vote for something. I'm just hoping they're voting for Kamala Harris, honestly.
We are house divided. At this time, my husband, he's more leaning towards the Trump side, and I'm leaning more towards the Harris side, but I'm still trying to persuade him to come to the other side.
And what is his objections?
Well, he just doesn't feel that like a woman is fit for the job, so to speak.
What you getting, 10th fade? And then we bring the top down. I'm gonna be honest with you. During his time in presidency, a lot of money was flowing around.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was kind of like my reason for being like, hey, if you're gonna do that again, you know, you run that back. He does a lot of stuff for shock value, just to get you to look at him. You know what I mean? So I don't really be taking none of that stuff serious. I'm gonna take my time with it. Because, you know, it's like the lesser of the two evils type of thing.
One topic of conversation has been the idea that some men don't want to vote for a woman president. Do you think that's a factor?
I hear that a lot.
Yeah. What do they say?
Women are too emotional to run the country.
What do you think of that?
What do I think of that? I'm married. You think I'm about to answer that?
What do you say to them?
What do I say to them?
Yeah, when they say that.
I tell them the same thing I told you. I'm married. So, and my wife run my household. So, you know what? If they run the household like that, they could. I believe they can do it. I just thought about it. I believe a woman could run the presidency. I believe that.
I've never seen a president tweet so much out of emotions. So to say a female cannot run the country because of emotions, and then the person she's running against stay on Twitter all day reacting because of emotions doesn't make sense. There are some men that are very much emotional. Their emotions might come out in different ways, anger, rage, but it's still an emotion. If y'all say a woman can't run the country because she's emotional, well, then he can't run the country because he's emotional. And that's all we got. It ain't like we got 10 candidates to pick. We got 1 and 2. So it's, you want the emotional female, so to speak, when I say, and I'm quoting it, emotional female since women are emotional, or do you want the emotional male?
I couldn't have said it better, my doggone self. Because the thing that bothers me, outside the fact of why people are still on, why you're still on the fence, number one, how could you still be on the fence when, again, you have a Madam Vice President who is way qualified, who just 2 weeks ago said what she wants to do for Black men in this country. She laid it out in giving you guys a tax incentive for starting your own business, decriminalizing marijuana, working on mental and physical health for Black men. Because let's be honest, we don't really take good care of ourselves. We don't. And we know why. Other things come up. We got to work, make sure our family's taken care of. I get that. But she mentioned several initiatives she wanted to push forward to Black men. But think about the top 3 I just sat there and said. She wants to give a $20,000 tax break for Black men wanting to start their own business. She wants to decriminalize marijuana. That alone will have volumes across this country. Decriminalizing marijuana, at the same time expunging the records of those with marijuana-related offenses on their records. Again, and not to mention, decriminalizing marijuana means that our jail cells and our prisons are going to become less crowded. At the same time, the mental and physical health a thing that we keep on talking about with black men, getting your levels checked, getting your prostate checked, your heart checked, your mental because of suicide. 3 things that Madam Vice President Harris has pointed out that she wants to do. And yet I hear pendejos like that saying, well, what has she really done for black men? She just sat there and told you what she wanted to do. Well, I don't think a woman can be president because, women are emotional. Okay. Oh boy. Okay. I point this out. Let's not use Madam Vice President Harris. Let's use Hillary Clinton. You guys remember when Hillary Clinton sat in a actual congressional hearing for 15 hours? A woman getting grilled by older men in a closed-off government hearing for 15 hours. This woman didn't flinch. Trump couldn't sit in a room with an investigator for less than 30 minutes. I'm just saying, women are emotional. Let me point this out, and I'll just reiterate what that person said in the video. You're telling me a woman can run a house. You're telling me a woman can direct and teach children. A woman can be a school teacher. A woman can be a nurse. A woman can be a business owner. A woman can be anything that she can do as well as a man can do. But you're going to sit there and tell me that she's too emotional to be the commander-in-chief of this country. I've always said it best, I'll say again, if a woman can run a household, she can run the government. Because Trump tried to run the government like a business. We saw what happened with him. And it always kills me where you always have this machismo, sexist thing. Well, I don't know if I could be okay with one being president. 22 plus countries have figured this shit out. 22. And that's just off the top of my head. 22 different countries out there and counting have had women at the highest office in their countries. Some as presidents, some as prime ministers. And yet they've been fine. Thriving, if you will. But you're going to sit there and tell me, well, I don't know if I could trust a woman to be president because, again, I just don't. Well, trust me, Trump was emotional. And guess what he wanted to do? He wanted to have every Black Lives Matter person shot in the leg. He wanted to send the army down to defend the border from illegal immigrants crossing. He wanted to arm Israel to the teeth against Gaza and Hamas. All from emotion. But you're going to sit there and tell me a woman being emotional is a more dangerous thing. Have several seats and touch a lot of grass. Yeah, truly crazy. Again, you shouldn't be indifferent on voting at this point, but we're always going to have somebody. But moving right along, guys, because, again, this story that we're about to talk about that comes out of Minneapolis is just nuts. Imagine you have a neighbor that is unruly, just pretty much determined to make your life a living hell. You have multiple police reports against this man, and nothing was done. Then one day, as you're doing yard work, said neighbor decides to shoot you. Even more so, what is truly crazy about this, that after the neighbor has shot you, he has not been arrested, and at the same time, still in his home. It's not a made-up story. This actually happened.
This was a shocking moment caught on camera. Video obtained by our NBC affiliate KARE 11 shows David Matori trimming a tree outside his Minneapolis home Wednesday when, according to court documents, a bullet was fired from his neighbor's upstairs window.
The bullet went down through my neck and then all the way back to my spine.
Matori told NBC affiliate KARE 11 he's also recovering from broken ribs and a concussion. Adding, the last 11 months since he and his wife moved in, they've been living a nightmare next door to John Shawshak. Court documents show the victim called police 19 times prior to the shooting for incidents including harassment, hate speech, and verbal threats. It also says Shawshak suffers from mental illness. Shawshak has been charged with attempted murder, but he is not in jail. Police allowing him to stay in his home because they say he's a threat to himself and others.
The likelihood of an armed, violent confrontation where we may have to use deadly force with the suspect in this case is high.
That excuse sparking community outrage.
We have to take violent criminals off the street. So I'm not a police officer. I don't know how that gets done, but I know it needs to get done.
Police say Shawshack rarely leaves his home, and the department has not set an arrest date.
We are not going to bust the door down, guns blazing, and get into a deadly force situation, but we will ensure the community will be safe.
Mattori says he feels the Minneapolis Police Department failed to protect his family by not arresting his neighbor when they needed them most.
If you're saying you're scared, what does that do to me? You know, like you have this body armor, you have the professional training.
Dana Griffin, NBC News.
So what's crazy about this is that man right there is the person that was shot because David Maturi and his wife moved into said neighborhood, was harassed by said neighbor. Said neighbor decided on one particular day when the man was doing yard work, decided to shoot said neighbor. And for a week, and I do mean a week, that neighbor was not arrested, not charged. At the same time, as you heard from the chief of police officer's mouth, we don't want to go in there guns blazing and escalate a situation. Let's think about this here. Because first you're going to sit there and say, yeah, we failed Mr. Mattori. We failed him horribly. While the person, John Shawshack, was allowed to sit in his house comfortably for a week and police didn't arrest him. And at the same time, had a standoff with the police. Now, you're probably wondering, why does this sound familiar? Why is it, and I say this all the time, children, people of color, it just seems to me the police are inept at doing their job whenever it comes to those two things, those two groups of people. Because again, this is a clear-cut story. So you're telling me that this couple, and again, filed 19 reports on their neighbor to the police. This neighbor, John Shawshack, has a history of mental illness, and he's armed. How is it that, for the simple fact of the matter, is the police are too scared to do their job? And it's amazing where that man thankfully survived. He is recovering. It's a long road to recovery, but he's recovering. But this idiot, this pendejo who shot him, cowardly, I might add, was taken in with kid gloves. Taken in with kid gloves. All I could sit there and say the entire time is and I'm going to say it. Let's say John Shawshack was black, who shot a white neighbor. I guarantee police and SWAT would have been rolling in there minutes afterwards, whether he was armed or not. The weak sauce argument that the chief of police have gave for the city of Minneapolis that they failed this man. For the simple fact is they failed this man because this man was shot and his shooter was untouched until he turned himself in after a standoff. There is nothing more that can be said outside the fact that the chief of police, the officers, that entire department needs to be evaluated, but that chief of police needs to be fired. Needs to be fired. Because it sounds like a whole lot of covering my own ass versus actually making sure citizens are safe. Because when the officer says, oh, we're not going to barge in that door for one assailant because that could escalate the situation, but we're going to make sure people are safe. Really? A man on his own land, a man that's in front of his own house, a man that's doing yard work was just shot by his neighbor, and you were more worried about what the neighbor would do with your own life versus the black man fighting for his in the hospital. Miss me with the bullshit. And yet you wonder why people of color will never trust law enforcement, because law enforcement has better protection than people of color do. Don't believe me? Let's go to Louisiana. Remember the murder of Ronald Green? I don't call it shooting. I don't call it deadly arrest. I call it what it is. It was a murder for Ronald Green. If you don't remember, guys, here's the video. And yes, trigger warning, it is slightly graphic, at least audio-wise.
Yes.
So sad.
Very sad. I don't feel like it's justice. I feel like they should have got charged with murder. You know, I mean, a great leader told me we can't treat extraordinary things like they normal, because it's not normal. When we fight, we win. And we got to keep on fighting.
Okay, so that was the video. Initially, like they said, the family was told that he died in a car crash. But police cameras show that he was beaten, he was attacked, and eventually led to his death. Now, here's the thing. One of the state troopers, Louisiana state troopers that was all in that video, Mr. Corey York, basically, he got the deal of a lifetime. What happened was he got a plea deal. Because for negligent homicide and malfeasance, if I pronounced that right, I apologize. He pleaded no contest to misdemeanor battery in exchange for a year of probation and an agreement to testify against the last officer that's still facing trial. Now, keep in mind, they basically offered Mr. Corey York a deal. You flip on said officer, we will give you misdemeanor battery, a year of probation. At the same time, here's the problem with this. Outside the fact that, let me get this straight. From a DA standpoint, you figured you can't get them all, but let's get the one that was responsible, the most responsible. And I don't blame the family, because again, here's the one thing about the family though, is just that whenever the part of his no contest guilty plea, because it can't be used in a wrongful death suit. So the family of Mr. Green can't sue, and that's in that instance cannot use that for wrongful death lawsuit. And here's also the crazy thing. Mr. York will keep his $83,000 a year pension because he retired in August. If I was the family of the victim, how is it? Because it seems like for a lot of things, Mr. York got the deal. Mr. York got the escape. At the same time, there's still one other officer that is still facing trial that apparently they're going to pin. He's going to be the fall guy. When it should be every officer that was there during that arrest, that basically, whether you threw a punch whether you threw a punch, the kick at Mr. Green or not, you are still liable for that man's death. And everybody there should be facing the same crime. But now you're about to have an officer basing his testimony in court, will turn around and sit there and say, yeah, said person over there was the trigger person. I was just an associate. Imagine you being able to lawfully kill a black man, get a year of probation, and keep your pension. And again, goes to the whole thing I have said before, goes the entire doggone thing about, law enforcement saying, why can't you trust us? It's simple. You have more protection than we do in cases where you're the judge, jury, and executioner. And here's the thing. These are the only times you'll hear back the blue or support the blue line, but you'll never hear all lives matter because, again, it's a crock of shit. But I digress. This is the reason why law enforcement will never have the trust of people of color, because you're too busy killing us and getting away with it. And more importantly, keeping your pension because of it. I mean, there's nothing more that can be said about that, except for police reform is needed. But before we get to the end and get to our feel-good segment, guys, I want to cover this because, you know, how the Frack We Got Here, it's an independent podcast. We do consider ourselves independent media because we do want to be able to share the news unbiased and at the same time give you a lot of perspective. We're not the only ones out there that are doing it. Because it seems independent media is getting the same type of reputation as your certified journalist stations and things of that nature, and that's fine. We hold ourselves to a standard of, we know we're going to give you the news and go from there. But we're not going to sensationalization. We're not going to make it twisted or make it twist or turn in any way, form, or function outside of what it's an intention. What I'm getting at here is, guys, you're going to see a lot of podcasts out there that are left or right. We claim to be neither, although a lot of our times are more progressive. But Joe Rogan, who is a douche, who is an absolute douche, the douchiest of douches next to the Paul brothers, as far as I'm concerned. Now that I got that out of my system. Of course, Mr. Joe Rogan did interview Dorito. He was set to interview Kamala Harris. He was set to interview Kamala Harris. He was set to interview, except, well, he had some conditions.
Catherine, popular podcaster Joe Rogan is also now tweeting after his interview with former President Trump, saying the Harris campaign offered for her to come on the podcast, but only for an hour and not in studio. Rogan writes, "I strongly feel the best way to do this is in the studio in Austin. My sincere wish is just to have a nice conversation and get to know her as a human being." What do you make of that? And given the massive size of his audience, how significant would an interview with Rogan be at this stage in the race for Harris?
Yeah, look, it remains to be seen how significant it would be. Of course, Trump did this interview because his campaign is trying and working to reach those younger voters that he so needs to pull over. Of course, Harris has been leading in that youth vote, that younger demographic, but Trump is also trying to pull that over, especially with white males. Rogan's audience obviously is tailored to that demographic, pulls in that demographic, if you will. So sure, I think it's important on the one hand that if Harris were to sit for an interview, of course, she would be targeting that same demographic that the former president did. At the same time, I'm not sure at the end of the day how much it would really matter, though he does have a big audience and a large reach. So it could potentially still happen at some point. We'll see.
So let's be honest. What Joe Rogan tried to do, because anybody that's watched Joe Rogan Experience podcast, his podcasts are extremely effing long, 2 to 3 hours. Does he have a following? Yes. I don't know who listens to Joe Rogan because the guy will question everything except what he puts out there. But at the same time, he did have Dorito on there for quite some time. Dorito loves to talk. Joe Rogan loves the attention. So what does he do? He turns around and he gives it to him. So at the same time, guys, again, this, and I point this out heavily. Dorito has a lot of time. He's not the president. He's not in any official capacity. He's a guy that is ducking court cases, lawsuits, and trying to run a campaign that's full of sketchy ass people. Of course he has time to talk. Whereas Madam Vice President Kamala Harris, she is a very, very, very busy woman. Not the fact that she's still Madam Vice President, not the fact that she still has to take on the crises that are happening in our country, not the fact of the matter that she still has things that need to be handled. On top of that, still has to run a campaign for President of the United States. Of course she doesn't have 3 hours. But Rogan, which again, I say is a douche, says, "Oh, well, you can't do it in my studio." No! She's campaigning till the end for election day, you pendejo. At the same time, well, I want to get to know her as a person. Are you trying to get to know the possible president of the United States? Or are you trying to date her? 3 hours? I'm sorry. This is the same guy who questioned who questioned when we had the COVID vaccines, questioned the crap out of them, although he has no knowledge or no medical scientific background whatsoever. He questioned so many things. And like I said, questioned so many things, except for what he pushes out for the world. Those on-it supplements, I believe that's what he does. And yet, here's my thing. If I got to interview Madam Vice President and she told me I have an hour, I will make that hour freaking work. If she says I can't meet you at your luxurious studio, which is basically my house, fine. Madam Vice President, where can I meet you? Can this be done online? I will accommodate you, because first and foremost, it's a freaking honor that you would be even considered. At the same time, you can use that moment to make a platform for yourself. Not to send views, but let's be honest, that's the name of the game. But you can use that as another area to where Madam Vice President can really explain her platform. And here's the thing, I'm just going to point this out. Club Shay Shay had no problem with it. Really didn't. Even more so. Sorry about that. It would kind of help if I basically unmuted it. So 1 second, because, production. Let's try it again.
It was obviously life-changing in so many ways. But, I have to tell you, Shannon, I at that moment, I knew what it would mean, but not in the detail of it. But I certainly understood the seriousness and the gravity of the moment. Mm-hmm. And actually, one of the first people I called was my pastor. I knew I needed a moment to just be still, and for my spirit and my mind to have clarity about the seriousness of the moment and my role. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget that call or that moment or that day.
Your life instantaneously changed in that moment.
Yes, it
because did. Now all of a sudden you weren't going to be running, you weren't going to be the VP anymore. You're going to be front and center. And you knew what the undertaking, having been 4 years as the vice president, what that moment would mean.
Mm-hmm. I had a sense of it, like so many of us, when you this is your life, right? So there are those moments where your instinct kicks in, mm-hmm. sometimes before your conscious mind and thoughts do.
Right.
And my instinct kicked in immediately that I need to focus, mm-hmm. and I need to do certain things immediately, which included making, I think we estimated I made over 100 calls that day. Mm-hmm. My team, and I have an incredible team, all came in, and nobody expected, right? It was a Sunday afternoon.
Correct.
In fact, we actually joked who had taken a shower that day. Because, people came in their workout clothes, different people, and, a bandana around their head, just, and came in, and we then, for hours and hours, well into the night.
Did you tell them?
Okay, I gotta stop right there because I don't want Club Shay Shay to, come at me with a copyright strike. But I wanted to point that out, though. It is amazing to me that in that situation, Shannon Sharp took the opportunity to sit there and say, "We will interview you, no problem." And we've seen what happens when you go on Shannon Sharp's show. Don't believe me? Ask Cat Williams. But again, only people who don't take that seriously, because to me that'd be like if Barack Obama said, I would love to be on your show. No problem. Whatever you need, Mr. President, no freaking problem. At the same time, there has to be a level of, because again, this is, everybody's like, but would you have done Trump? If you agreed to my questions. See, here's my thing. It's just like, to me, it's like 60 Minutes. 60 Minutes, when they usually do interview both presidential candidates and Trump declined, this is after Trump got fact-checked. This is after Trump got his ass kicked in his presidential debate with Madam Vice President Harris. He got his ass completely kicked. So what does he do? He doesn't talk to anybody because he knows he's an unfit president. I'm not going to lie, the same thing would have happened here. I would have asked him questions and I would not let up, because that's what a journalist is supposed to do. We want to hold, and I've been saying this the whole time on this podcast, you have to hold these candidates to the fire. And nothing wrong with holding them to the fire, because that's where you find out what type of candidates they are. But again, shout out for Shea Club Shay Shay, getting the interview along with the Breakfast Club and many other places where she's been, where Madam Vice President Harris has been, because again, she's making the rounds. And although Dorito should be ashamed of himself for going to a barbershop because it looked like a bad head in spades when he went in. One impossible. You'll get the reference if you remember that picture. But the last story I got, guys, is again, this is the reason why I say, for all their talk, because the job market right now is cooling off, and you can tell. But companies these days make it harder to be loyal, especially when you see things like this.
Grown men and women crying because they don't know where to get their next check. It's sad. It hurts.
Now at 5:30, dozens of people finding themselves suddenly out of a job after Pepsi abruptly closed its only Chicago area plant. As WGN's Andrea Medina reports now, the workers' union says the closure came without warning.
I'm emotional right now. Don't want to break down.
Daryl Smith showed up to work at the PepsiCo plant on 51st Street in Back of the Yards on Monday morning, just like he had for the last 29 years. But the forklift operator and union steward soon learned he and 78 other workers were being let go.
We shut the plants down, get some garbage bags, get your stuff out, and leave.
PepsiCo announced that their Southwest Side facility is now closed due to what the company calls physical limitations. The more than 60-year building was used for producing and distributing beverages. Employees have described the abrupt decision as a gut-wrenching shock.
It just made it seem like they woke up yesterday like, oh, we're just going to shut down 51st. Like, that's all, because they couldn't answer no questions. They was like, they don't know what's going on.
You think they would be bigger than this?
Yeah,
it's just messed up on the way they did it. I mean, they could have did it way better.
As if the news wasn't bad enough for the employees, they say they were escorted off the property by Chicago police officers. They indicated that this added another layer of distress to an already tough situation.
it was kind of crazy, like, this is how y'all treat like our employees.
Teamsters Local 727 claims the plant closed without any prior warning. They say at 5:45 this morning, PepsiCo sent an email to union members detailing the plant's immediate closure. But union reps argue that violates the WARN Act, which requires employers with 75 or more full-time employees to give 60 days advance notice of pending plant closures or mass layoffs.
This is the first time I've ever heard of people being told you are laid off effective immediately at this scale with no notice and really no answers of any kind.
PepsiCo released a statement acknowledging that the decision to close the 51st Street plant was difficult, but that it met all applicable legal requirements. Employees will receive their full wages and benefits through December 28th unless they resign before that date. The company also says it will work with union leaders to address the details of the closure. This unexpected shutdown has left dozens of workers facing uncertainty about their futures.
A lot of people want to retire from here. A lot of people have put their kids through school here, bought homes. So you got people living from paycheck to paycheck.
The union says there are other workers at the plant, but it's not clear what will happen to them. Nonetheless, they're determined to ensure the affected 79 employees are supported. Reporting from Back of the Yard.
So what's crazy is about the story is just that the sudden closure. Especially with unions. Like they said, you do, depending on the number of people that you have working there, maybe the people that you have working there, you do have to give a 60-day notice. They did not. And at the same time, this company just closed down and just told people, and I said, this is the cold part. And this is why some people sit there and say, don't give 2-week notices, don't do this, don't do that. And it's hard to argue with them. There is no corporate loyalty when companies like PepsiCo will gladly turn around and sit there and say, you know what? No, we'll close it. People are out of a job. And how they treat you. You know, you got so much time to get your stuff and get out. Police escort you out, making you feel like a criminal. PepsiCo should be ashamed because why is it the sudden closure of a factory and people out of work? In the job market right now, I can tell you, finding, you know, you can find crappy jobs. Crappy jobs, what I meant by crappy wages, the jobs that nobody wants to do, they will always be available because the people that are above you will not pay more. finding good, decent jobs to where you can, support yourself, support your family, be able to put a roof over their head, gas in your car, pay for a car note, pay for utilities, put food on the table, put clothes on your back, and go on vacation eventually. Those things right there are the sole reason why people want decent paying jobs. But corporations pull this mess and then turn around and say, well, we're having a record profit day. We're having a record profit year. It's a little hard to stomach. At the same time, hopefully those people that did lose their jobs will hopefully land on their feet somewhere, because again, I keep saying this, the way America's set up right now, for a lot of us, we're just 1 or 2 paychecks away from being on the street. At the same time, these corporations are still getting more and more and more, and they're not being held accountable. They are not paying their fair share of taxes. And at the same time, that uneven table, or the Reaganomics they believe, well, we give the rich and powerful all this will eventually trickle down. No, it's bullshit. Doesn't work. But again, we'll see what PepsiCo has to say, because right now, this is looking more like a lawsuit waiting to happen. But we're going to go and move on to our feel-good segment, guys. Usually how the Frack We Got Here, we do cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom, sometimes making use of faith in humanity. But hey, it's Wednesday. Tomorrow is Halloween and also pre-Friday. And I just realized this week, daylight savings time will die, at least for a little while. I hate daylight savings time. Losing an hour of sleep never made any sense to me. But we will leave you guys out some good vibrations, positive vibes. And I think this man, who literally has no hands, is still blessing people through his gift of music and song.
My church family actually gave me the name Gifted Hands. God showed me that even though I don't have physical hands, when I rap, when I sing, when I speak to people, he gave me gifted hands to help people, inspire them to live and not just exist.
To heal it takes time, plus the process ain't pretty, so the feeling ain't fun. Had to differentiate what's fake from real in my mind.
When I was born, the doctors told my mother that I wouldn't make it past the age of 3. The title that they put on the condition that they gave me when I was born was Cornelia Delane syndrome. They said I was supposed to be blind, that I was supposed to be deaf, that I wasn't supposed to be able to speak. She always tells me that in her dream beforehand, she got a message from God telling her to name me Emmanuel, which means God with us.
Hey, little child who's lonely, your better days are not far. Sometimes life, it gets ugly, and every day it feels hard.
Around the age of 12 or 13, my older brother, he had wrote something on paper that he wanted me to rap, and he made a beat. And from that moment is when I really fell in love just with music, just the ability to rhyme. It was because I was dealing with depression and I didn't know how to let it out in a good way. It clicked somehow that this thing that my older brother introduced me to, I could use as an outlet.
He has one of my favorite songs. Gifted Hands has one of my favorite songs.
Gifted Hands, my man. I'm telling you now, I don't care if it's a race, I'ma set my own pace. So ready, set, go.
My writing process is not complicated, but it's complicated. I'll hear a beat, I pray, and ask God to give me a message that'll be powerful, purposeful, positive, and timeless. I know that, the songs that I write isn't for everyone, but I do know that the people who are drawn to my music, they're going to get something from it. Now, I've also had a lot of people in my comments saying, hey, man, this is the type of music that we need. There's enough negativity going around, but there isn't enough music that actually uplifts us and that really encourages us to keep moving forward.
Years and years and years, it took a long time for me to be comfortable with me. It took a long time for me to be comfortable in my skin and understand that my normal is normal.
This is like a dream for me because I work hard for this. It's just such a beautiful thing because I get to tell at least one person in the crowd that you're not alone when they hear my song. I think it's very important that people with disabilities are not only seen more. I think it's very important that they're appreciated more, that they're recognized more. When I was growing up, I didn't have someone from my point of view who could understand what I went through. And there's a large percentage of people in the world with disabilities who feel like they don't matter because the world is sharing that, hey, you gotta look like this, you gotta talk like this. People with disabilities should be recognized more because our normal is normal. To anyone who is facing hardship, to anyone who feels abandoned, to anyone who feels alone, I would say, you're not alone. I'm here to tell you, if you're all you got right now, you can get up. You can live. You can have a life that you love, that you enjoy, that you are proud of. Please, get up and push.
Man, you can't beat a message like that with a stick. And I can't even follow up with that. I can't. And of course, his Instagram handle is I'm Gifted Hands. What can you say at that? You can follow up with that. That man is clearly gifted, of course, with Timbaland. You get Timbaland to sign off on you. I mean, just saying. And plus the message that he has, despite not being born with hands. And having the odds against you, that man is flourishing. And you can't help but be inspired. You really, truly cannot do anything else but be inspired. Again, get up and push. I mean, bruh, at that point, past the collection played around. But anyway, that's going to do it for this podcast, guys. I do thank you for liking, for watching, for sharing, for letting people know this is up and running. I certainly appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. Before I do get out of here, shameless plugs as usual. Starting first with Blurred Station. I keep telling you guys, this is the vehicle, this is the table that we always ask for content owned by us to be streamed, and that actual viewership and monetary goes back to us. That's the way it should be. Tubi is fine, but Tubi is also owned by the guy that owns Fox, and Tubi is well worth over $100 million. Why? Because of our viewership. Why not that same monetary amount go to us? That's where Blur Station comes in. If you do want to check out Blur Station, please go to blurrstation.com. At the same time, guys, if you want to join, hit the join now button. Under join now, you just select the Blurred's under join now, if you'll just select the Blurred's Eye View Affinity membership. And from there, guys, if you wouldn't mind selecting my name, Black Spartan, right there, I'll certainly appreciate that. As you can see, it's $10.99 a month, $10.99 a month to stream Blurred Station. After $10.99 a month, you do get the ability to own a piece of Blurred Station. And it doesn't get any better than that, than owning a part of a media conglomerate. Again, they have movies, they have television shows, animation, and more things coming on blurrstation.com. Please definitely check it out. You will not be disappointed because it is the vehicle that we've always asked for. Speaking of another vehicle, guys, APR TV or alwayspressrecord.com. They have their own app as well, especially on the Roku app, where you can see shows like mine and others out there. Again, another vehicle where content owned by us is being streamed out there and the monetary goes to us. This is the things we keep talking about, not working against each other, but working with each other, because this table is big enough for everybody to eat. You just got to make your own plate. Shout out to Hellspawn Cosplay for that. But again, check out aprtv.com, whether on your smart devices or through the Roku app. Also, at the same time, guys, vote.org. I keep talking about this. We're not that far away. November 5th is just next week, folks. November 5th is where we can vote. Again, you can take the time to figure out, guys, your registration, to register to vote. You still may have early voting in some states. I know for Tennessee, ours wraps up tomorrow, which is Halloween. So, not sure if it's going to be the same thing in your state, but you can definitely check it out. But again, make sure you're prepared. And the only way you can make sure you're prepared, guys, is to make sure that you're registered, that you have everything that you need, and at this point, knowing where you need to go vote. Vote.org can help you with all of those things. So definitely check it out. As for myself, guys, you can find me Black_Spartan615 on the interwebs. I'm pretty much a very social guy. You can talk to me about anything outside of current events, sports, anime, whatever. Just don't make it weird. I don't want to have to block you. I don't want to have to sit there and treat you like a Law & Order SVU person that thinks that you just might be slightly creepy. Again, be cool. That's all I ask. At the same time, guys, the link that's extra short at the bottom, make that a little bit bigger for you guys to see. If you copy and paste that link in your browser, it'll take you to my link tree, the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of our podcasts. Like, share, follow, subscribe, tell people about it. A like, a share, and a follow costs nothing but means everything. And right now, as I've said before at the end of this podcast, I'll say again, I've been saying this now for almost 2 years. Next week, I will not be. Next week, after November the 5th, I will not be able to say it anymore. So next week, after next Tuesday, I will no longer be able to sit there and say that we all have a civic duty. That yes, get out and vote. Yes, be active. Please don't be inactive. Don't be indecisive. Please vote. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, I do not want to see the second coming of Dorito. I don't, because it's gonna be much worse than the first one. At the second time, we can make history again, folks. We made history by inducting our first Black president. We can make history twice by electing our first woman, our first Madam President. We could. Yes, I'm being biased about that because, again, Trump does not need to be in the presidency seat once more. Because, trust me, no good will come if the Eye of Sauron is put back in his chair. But, again, vote. That's all I can sit there and say about that. The last thing I'll say about how the Frack We Got Here, it's all about staying informed. We try to be informed because you know why? History has shown us that if we do not change, it will repeat itself. That's why we try to make decisions now that we should have done back then to be better. That's why, electing our first Black woman in the Supreme Court, Miss Supreme Court Justice Johnny Brown Jackson, electing our first Black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, and hopefully very soon next Tuesday, electing our first Black Madam President. All great things. We don't learn from history. We are doomed to repeat it. That's what we keep asking ourselves. Why does everything go about our paycheck? Literally. Why are we electing different politicians but still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the frack we got here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Please take care of yourselves and each other. And I promise we hopefully next Tuesday we'll all be breathing a sigh of relief. Peace.